We all know someone like Stanley Crawford, the person you see but really don't see, the one you describe as a hell of a nice guy. But it turns out overlooking Stan was the biggest mistake Elizabethtown, Kentucky ever made. Now, most people leave their mark on the world through what they build, what they achieve, or what they create. Stanley Crawford left his mark through something else entirely: showing up at walking speed for 50 years. And when he was gone, a whole town realized that they'd been watching a masterpiece of ordinary life and took it for granted. I'm Steve Rode, and this is True Stories from the Obit Files, where I share real stories about real lives, not celebrities, not headlines, just ordinary people who lived extraordinary lives in quiet ways. People you might have passed on the sidewalk without ever knowing their story. But what I didn't expect was this: most people drive through life, always in a rush. Stan? He chose a different speed. For 50 years, and in that choice, he changed a whole town. This is the story of Stanley Crawford from Elizabethtown, Kentucky, a place about 45 minutes south of Louisville, where about 33,000 people call home. It's one of those Kentucky towns that sits right at the crossroads. Interstate 65 running north to Louisville and south toward Nashville. The kind of place where Abraham Lincoln's parents once lived, where a Civil War cannonball still rests embedded in a downtown building wall, and where a historic town square filled with local shops and restaurants keeps the past and present connected. Like many Kentucky communities, Elizabethtown has faced its share of struggles, workforce challenges, the kind of problems that touch families everywhere. But in the middle of all that, there was Stan, walking the same streets, rain or shine, bringing a quiet light to anyone who happened to notice. When times got tough, there he was, steady, predictable, kind. The kind of presence that reminds you some things don't change, some people don't give up, and sometimes that is exactly what a community needs. Stanley Crawford lived what he called a simple life as a man on his own. Stan lived independently, though his brothers and sisters lovingly helped care for him and made sure he was always included in everything. Maybe that's part of what made his daily walks so special. They were his declaration of independence, his way of being part of the bigger world. For over 50 years, Stan walked the streets of Elizabethtown, never accepting a ride, always giving the same reason: I need the exercise. But here's the thing about walking speed. That's conversation speed. That's the pace where shopkeepers can call your name, where bank tellers remember your usual business, and where you notice if someone looks tired or happy or needs a friendly word. Stan didn't just walk the town. He stitched it together, one conversation at a time, one daily hello at a time. Moving through the local grocery, the bank, clothing stores, fast food restaurants, he became known as Stan the Man. And you only get a nickname like that when people genuinely light up seeing you coming. Maybe in your town, it's the man who sweeps the sidewalk before dawn, or the woman who waves to every school bus. We don't know their stories, but they know ours because they've been watching quietly for decades. Now, you could chart Elizabethtown's history by Stan's footsteps. But here's what you couldn't see from the sidewalk, and this is where Stan's story gets remarkable. One local business didn't just know Stan as a regular customer. They honored his loyalty with a plaque for being a customer for over 40 years. They presented it to him when they learned about his terminal diagnosis. And when they handed him that plaque, I'd like to think it wasn't just for loyalty, it was for reminding the rest of us what loyalty looks like. Now, let me do some math for you. It's going to blow your mind. 50 years of daily walks, that's roughly 18,000 days. If Stan walked just 2 miles a day through Elizabethtown, and I'm betting it was more, that's 36,000 miles. Stan walked the equivalent of going around the entire earth, maybe more than once, on foot, through the same hometown streets, never accepting a ride. But here's what nobody calculated at the time. Elizabethtown had its own economic development department. It wore sneakers and waved at traffic. 40 years at one business alone. Every day at the grocery store, the bank, restaurants. Conservative estimate? Stan probably spent $300,000 in local businesses over his lifetime. Population of this economic program? 1. If Stan had owned a car, he would have been just another face through a windshield. Instead, he chose to be present at walking speed for half a century. That's not just exercise. That's a 50-year unpaid, unspoken masterclass in how to be part of something bigger than yourself. Stan lived like he understood something the rest of us forgot. That the point isn't to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. The point is everything that happens between A and B. Every hello, every familiar face, every small business owner who knows your name. Stan turned transportation into transformation, his own and his whole town's. Stan was a lifelong Catholic, moving faithfully from St. Clair in childhood to St. Ambrose, and finally to St. James for the past 50 years. Same pew every Sunday, early arrival every time. In an age of efficiency, he chose presence. In an age of convenience, he chose connection. So here's the thing about Stan. He didn't just walk the town for 50 years. He walked it with lifelong faith. The same steady steps that carried him to the grocery store and the bank also carried him to church. The same consistency that made him Stan the man on the streets made him that familiar figure in the same pew week after week, year after year. When Stan got sick, people didn't need an announcement. They just noticed. They noticed the silence where his steps used to be. But here's what's beautiful about his story. Stan was important to those who took the time to say more than hello. When word got out about his illness, his community rallied around him, offering prayers and support. The same people who had watched him walk past their windows for decades suddenly realized they weren't just losing a familiar face. They were losing someone who mattered. I mean, picture this, the same cashier at the grocery store who had seen Stan every Tuesday for 20 years. The bank teller who had his greeting ready before he walked in. The restaurant worker who started preparing his usual when she saw him coming down the block. Business owners called each other. Church members organized. People who had exchanged nothing but hellos for decades suddenly realized they were losing their town's heartbeat. Stan didn't just walk those streets. He was those streets. For 50 years, he was the unofficial mayor of everyday life. The person who knew which businesses were thriving, which families had celebrations, who needed a friendly face. He was Elizabethtown's living memory. He found joy in life's simple pleasures. The Grand Ole Opry, Gunsmoke, Old Westerns, Wheel of Fortune, family trips to casinos. The kind of contentment that doesn't need constant novelty to feel complete. People like Stan, they keep things going, not through the grand gestures or headlines, but through the revolutionary act of showing up consistently with kindness, at conversation speed, every single day. Here's what haunts me about Stan's story. How many people like him are walking through our lives right now, building community one conversation at a time, one loyal decade at a time. And we're too busy driving past to notice. I didn't know Stan, but he sounds like one of the many people in life who get taken for granted and assumed to be unremarkable. But he was so remarkable. One step at a time, one hello at a time, one faithful decade at a time. You know what I feel learning about Stan's story? Regret. I regret I never had a chance to meet him and know his story when he was still with us. If I had, I would have just told him, Stan, thank you for being you. Thank you for showing up. And thank you for 50 years of quiet faithfulness. What if the soul of your town doesn't have a title or a job description? Just a habit of walking by every day with a smile and a wave. Not everyone makes the front page, but everyone, and I mean everyone, leaves a story worth telling. Real people, real lives. Never ordinary, always remembered. Thanks for letting me tell this one. And if you're lucky enough to have a Stan in your town, slow down, wave back. Because people like Stan, they don't just deserve a story. They give the rest of us one to live by.